some dare call it conspiracy.
Welcome to the Some Dare Call It Conspiracy podcast, hosted by Brent Lee and Neil Sanders. After nearly 20 years exploring the world of conspiracy culture, we are taking our guests and listeners on a guided tour of the rabbit hole. Our mission? To discover where the truth lies.
So, if we remember, in the last episode, we'd seen that there were certain court statements that were made supposedly by Paloma that had been published by Kay. And I believe the Sons had both cast doubt over the authenticity of it. But also some other people on Twitter actually did a similar thing. There was a few people, and the thing is, we don't know whether this is true. We don't know whether it's accurate. But this is something that was said. So some people basically came on Twitter and said, I went to school with Paloma, among the best schools in the country. She was one of the smartest students, a talented linguist, and got into Cambridge. Reading the statement Kay has posted, there's no way Paloma wrote it. This is surely obvious to anyone with any more than one brain cell. Somebody else wrote, I attended Paloma's college in Cambridge before her, and from what I've read, she was an exceptional student there. I'm in no doubt that someone of her caliber could not have penned the letter herself. The spelling, grammar makes that implausible. So, and again, it's very difficult to know what to do with that because this is just stuff that has appeared on the internet. That may not be authentic itself, but what we're here to do is we're here to chart what's been going on and people's opinions on all sides, basically. So if we remember that Dr. Liz O'Riordan, the surgeon that deals with cancer, she'd promoted the fact that she'd been on Panorama, and she'd wrote a tweet along the lines of that Paloma had an 85% chance of survival, and it was such a shame that she chose not to go down that path. And Kay had responded in a rather aggressive way on Twitter. She then responded again on June the 28th. Kay responds to a tweet from Dr. O'Riordan, and it was essentially the same tweet, advertising just the fact that she was on Panorama and the story that was presented on Panorama. This is a lie, Liz, and one of the most damaging and disgraceful accusations that could be levelled at a mother who has already endured the death of her child. Paloma was 23 years old, a Cambridge graduate, a polyglot, a woman of profound strength, intelligence, and independence, fully capable of making her own medical decisions. She said no to chemotherapy, not because of me, not under pressure, but because she read the evidence. She reviewed the lack of confirmed diagnosis. She saw the harm already caused by the unauthorized administration of drugs like rasburicase, covertly, given without written consent, and so she chose the path of informed refusal. To twist that into a story of parental coercion is not only false, it is a defamation, and of her voice, her will, and her legal rights under Montgomery versus Lanarkshire Health Board 2015 UKSC 11. I assume, Liz O'Riordan, you are familiar with that ruling. So I ask you, is what you have stated medicine or propaganda? And was it to protect institutions and clinicians who acted unlawfully, who withheld records, who lied, and who now attempt to shift blame to conceal the punctum temporis and the true medical cause of death onto the one person who fought for Paloma's life with every ounce of her being, her mother? You do not get to rewrite my daughter's story. You do not get to erase her choices. You were not there. I was. Have you ever seen the histology report? Because if you had, you would know that Paloma did not have confirmed diagnosis of lymphoma. The core lymph node sample taken on the 30th of December 2023 was labelled as crushed artifact in over 50% of the tissue, deemed inadequate for FISH testing, and described in the report as showing no definitive features of high-grade lymphoma. There was no complete immunophenotyping, no second opinion, and no MDT-confirmed diagnosis. So that 85% survival was from what? I will not stay silent whilst you attempt to weaponize your platform to silence the truth. So that's interesting. I mean, again, the the contradiction within that is that basically there was no follow-up testing, there was none of this testing and stuff like that. And there's two ways of looking at that. One, you don't believe that she had cancer, so why would she require that testing? And two, you took her out of the arena where those tests could be done. Like, I don't know why, again, she's spoken about these other clinics. Maybe she did have tests there, but we don't know of this. And if not, why not? Would be the obvious question. Now, she also decided to drop the hammer, so to speak, on Ander. Ander, if we remember, was Paloma's ex-boyfriend, and she claimed that Paloma had said that she'd been sexually assaulted by Ander during their relationship. And Kay then released what could be described as evidence. This is what she purports to be evidence of this horrible crime. So, Kay tweeted out, "It makes us indescribably sad to share this, but we must correct the record and false portrayal in Paloma's memory. For the parents of Paloma Scarlett Shemirani, the man who appeared on BBC Panorama claiming to be her boyfriend had in fact been reported by Paloma to Sussex Police for sexual coercion and stalking. Paloma was first interviewed alone, at home, by a male officer, a serious breach of protocol in cases of sexual assault. She was later contacted by a female officer and had begun writing her full statement. The police mishandling added to her stress and suffering. Paloma deserves justice. I fear I may be in danger and his disgusting conduct could endanger other young women. Mrs. K. Alison Shemirani, Dr. Fatima Shemirani, blah, 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 blah." Right. Okay, so just to clear something up, it's not a breach of protocol in a case of sexual assault for a male officer to go and see a female potential victim. It's one of those strange things where sometimes different people find different things comforting. Sometimes people would find speaking to a male more comforting than speaking to a female for whatever reason. Sometimes they would feel more embarrassed speaking to a female than a male, and vice versa. So there are options. And what would happen in that case is if a police officer turned up that was male and you didn't want to speak to a male, you just request to speak to a female. So then she posts what is supposedly Paloma's statement. Now, this is strange, a little strange, and it may just be confused by the explanation that or my understanding, or the explanation that Kay has said. But as far as I can understand, she went out with Ander. At some point, she split up with Ander. At some point, this incident happened. Later, she spoke to her sister, who said, "Yeah, that's a bit cagey." Even later, she split up with Ander. Then she explained the thing to her mum. Then she made a statement to the police. The initial statement, basically, she didn't say anything that was really a crime. So even later than that, she then made another statement via text. And then even later than that, apparently after her death, Kay Shemirani found her diaries, which contains even more incriminating evidence, but nobody's seen that. So just to understand, that is the timeline. So this is titled Very Urgent, and this was sent on the 30th of April, 2024. Good morning. I hope you're well. I reported this crime, but there wasn't enough characters for what I wanted to say, nor was there a place to attach photos of evidence. I sent you the same statement in full, as well as other pictures. And this is the first thing that is shown is a text message from Andy, which is clearly Anders. And this is from the 15th of January, apparently. Also, in advance of you coming, I feel a bit awkward. Can we not do sexy stuff? It makes me feel a bit sad because I can't really do any of that stuff. And I don't really ever feel like it either. I haven't really known how to broach the subject. I don't want you to feel bad either. I totally get like you've not changed. It's just me. But yeah, I just don't really want to have a sexual relationship right now. It doesn't feel right. I don't feel right either. And Andy responds, okay, I totally get it. Anyway, so that is included. And then there's messages from from Paloma, and remember, she's done the initial statement where she basically didn't feel comfortable saying anything. She then spoke to a female officer, and then she sent this in via text. Background: I first met Andrew in June 2020 at a local park. We started dating shortly after, and were official by October 2020. At some point in the first year we were dating, I found out that Andrew had introduced my little sister Oriana to drugs. I also found out he had asked her to hide drugs in our house for him, which my mum later found and handed in to the police. The current matters. In January 2024, Andrew came to visit me at my mum's house on the 9th of the 1st, 2024, and the 12th of the 1st, 2024, having been discharged from hospital. Just 2.5 weeks prior, I was ill from the effects of the drugs that I'd been given in hospital, which was a high dose of prednisolone. I was vomiting, tired, and feeling generally low from the stress of the, albeit differential diagnosis. Andrew had witnessed me being physically sick whilst at my house. Despite my described state, and in addition to my process to Andrew that my sexual libido had simply vanished since I'd been admitted to hospital, Andrew made non-consensual sexual advances at me. I expressed that I was not in the mood to engage in any sexual activity, but not wanting to cause a scene or experience any distress or ruin the pleasant atmosphere, I began masturbating him. I was not enjoying the act. I didn't want to have any sort of sexual encounter at that time, and I felt too sick. I just wanted it to all be over very quickly. When it was over, I didn't even feel relieved. I felt dirty and used. I was sad that the guilt I had felt hadn't even been taken away. I felt responsible for the whole situation, since it was me and my damaged body that had brought all this strain to our relationship. I insisted that Andrew leave shortly after the sex act, as feeling so bad about having been violated, I didn't want him to be around me. The time after this, on the 12th of the 1st, 2024, when Andrew came around again, I was in the same physical and emotional state at the time, feeling ill, weak, and not in a good mood. He attempted to initiate sexual acts, on this occasion repeatedly attempting to coerce me and moving my hand to his erect penis. This was non-consensual, as was the case last time. I began masturbating him to get this sexual encounter out of the way so that I could relax again. I derived absolutely no enjoyment whatsoever from this experience. This time, he even requested that I switch to performing oral sex on him, which, given that I had been repeatedly thrown up while he was with me, I was disgusted, appalled at his callousness and sole interest in self-gratification, and so I declined to do so, since I also felt so nauseous at the time. Once he'd finished, I felt the same sadness and dirtiness that I had done sexual things when I had not wanted to, and was coerced. On the 16th of January, I was due to see Andrew again, but I was absolutely dreading it, since I knew that it would mean that I would be pressured to engage in a sexual act with him again. So this wouldn't happen. I actually sent him a text. See the attached text, which is the thing at the top, asking him not to come on to me. However, my trust in him by that time had been broken, so I couldn't relax when he was around, and I was afraid he wouldn't try again. A slight point is that I think the dates don't match. It's the 15th and the 16th. Yeah, it's the 15th on the text, and she says the 16th in the statement. But that's a very, very minor point. It's not really the most important detail. On the 16th of January, I was due to see Andrew again, but I was absolutely dreading it, since I knew this would mean that I would be pressured to engage in a sexual act with him again. So this wouldn't happen. I actually sent him a text asking him not to come on to me. However, my trust in him by that time had been so broken that I couldn't relax when he was around. I was afraid he would try again. At this point, I would like to add that Andrew's sexual advances at my mum's house were decidedly out of character. Andrew was mostly uninterested in having a physical relationship with me. My attempts were often rejected, which made me feel rejected, terrible and undesirable. I'm deeply disturbed that Andrew took more interest in me sexually when I was unwell and vulnerable than when I am fit, confident and healthy. I have since discussed the incident with my doctor. I was very embarrassed about the two incidents, so I did not want anyone to know until I finally confided in my sister about it in mid-February. Her shock response confirmed that all the negative emotion I was feeling was entirely normal, that I had been taken advantage of. Only then did I feel able to tell my mum in the car, and when we had returned from Eastbourne and confided in her friends too, I broke up with him shortly after on the 11th of the 3rd, 2024, partly because of the assault. On the night of the 25th of April at approximately 11 p.m, a package was delivered to our house that had been left outside the front door by someone. The carry bag had Swedish writing on it. Ander Harris is Swedish, so I knew that the bag had come from his house. The content of the bags were deeply disturbing. My black lacy thong and a toothbrush. I began to panic as these items together seemed to send a taunting message about what had happened in my bedroom. It was also the night before a court hearing into which he had involved himself to attempt me to force into life-threatening treatment for a misdiagnosis which would leave me infertile. I feel that I am being harassed, taunted and stalked, and so now I've become distressed. When I hear car noises outside late in the evening, I'm frightened to be on my own, and that is why I am now reporting the sexual assault, as I fear I could be in danger and his disgusting conduct could endanger other young women. I believe that the facts stated in this witness statement are true. I understand that proceedings for contempt of court may be brought against anyone who makes or causes a false statement in a document, yada, yada, yada. Now, interesting. The very first response on Twitter was from someone who I shan't name that says anyone can knock up an email and make it look like it's from someone else. And if you had a face or fingerprints, you could easily access the phone and write whatever you wanted, which is a fair point. But we just don't know. There's three ways of looking at this, right? Okay. The first way of looking at this is that you always believe a victim, and regardless of what you think or what goes on in your relationship or whatever, if you are coerced into doing something that you're not comfortable with, that is not all right. Whether that rises to the degree of sexual assault is another question. Now, the middle ground would be that basically this sounds a little bit like something that really could have been solved with a conversation. And you know, I don't know. The third
sometimes people aren't comfortable having those conversations. And,
that is very true. That is very true.
Their feelings are valid. I'll just
say
that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. This is the thing. Feelings are always valid. This is the point. But that is why communication is so very, very vital, isn't it? Because obviously, you know, miscommunication is going to happen as well.
Absolutely.
So we're going from the scale of this was totally not on to this is a misunderstanding or a miscommunication to the other end of the scale, which would be that this could very well be somebody attempting to smear somebody after the fact. Is there any evidence in the text that potentially leads to that? What's that strange thing about trying to basically say he was never into sex before, and it was only when I got ill that he got all horny around me? That is strange to me. That reminded me of the character assassinations in Paloma's previous statement. Now, obviously, if the previous statement was written by Paloma, which as it's claimed to be, maybe she's just got this spiteful thing where she goes off on ad hominem tangents, you know, just like her mum did, you know, when she's called like Gabriel fat and Mariana Spring bad skin and stuff like that. But perhaps it's just one of these, you know, like mother, like daughter. That is certainly possible. I just thought that was very strange in that particular thing. And then the other thing that I didn't quite understand as well was the carry bag that's been delivered. The carry bag that's been delivered containing knickers and a toothbrush, and how that's a taunting. I mean, it could be, or it could just be that he was dropping off the knickers and toothbrush that you left at his house. I don't see that as a particularly strong piece of evidence. If somebody had written that, say, let's pretend that this is a detective novel, what's it supposed to symbolise? What's the knickers and the toothbrush supposed to symbolise? I don't understand. And then there was one thing that struck me as a bit odd, was this bit where it was the night before a court hearing into which he had involved himself to attempt to force me into a life-threatening treatment for a misdiagnosis that would leave me infertile. I don't know. There's something strange about that statement. It reminds me of somebody else. But as I say, we just don't know. And this is the horrible, horrible thing about this thing, because it is a sliding scale. It could be very well the case that the Paloma did feel coerced, and you know, then you've always got to be sympathetic towards people that have got themselves in situations where they've been forced into something that they don't want to do. It's horrific. The middle ground is that this is a lack of communication. The further away from the beginning is that this is a smear campaign designed to support the story that Kate's spreading. And we don't know. We just don't know. And, the only thing we could do is invite the listeners to come to their own conclusion. But also this happened in January. Apparently she confided in her sister in February. She dumped Andrew in March, and then she waited till the end of April to contact the police. And then after she died, remember, Kay found the diaries written in her own handwriting that show that apparently it was deeper than that. So we just don't know, and it's horrible. Regardless, whatever of those scenarios it is, it's horrible because either somebody's had something happen to them that was not fair. There's been a complete lack of communication, which is always horrible because then people think the worst of one another, or somebody's lying to smear an innocent person. And we just don't know. Anyway, Sebastian goes on a live on Twitter, and he explains that the court case that has been discussed previously was to try and get Paloma out of the care of Kate Shemirani, because as was discussed before, according to Kay, she had got power of attorney over her daughter, which, again, there may well be a very, very reasonable explanation for that, but I personally don't understand it, because it's just like, well, if you trust your mother and she's your mother and there's nothing weird going on and she makes a suggestion, then you would just do it or not do it because, again, you're an adult. So who knows? Who knows what that's about? Kate responds by saying, why are Paloma's brothers not outraged that this happened to their sister? They're aligning with him. And this is in her own diaries, in her own handwriting. She really wants to hammer home that it's in her own handwriting, which, again, as we've explained, of course it's in her own handwriting, Kay. It's her diary. It would be very odd if it wasn't in her handwriting. Anyway, so someone responds to Kay and says, why did the police not charge him or take action against him? They're talking about Andrew at this point. And Kate Shemirani's simple response is, remains open. Ask them. I don't know. Maybe she's got a lot on her plate or whatever, but I don't know. Maybe there's nothing that she can do, but it's strange. She seems to have this attitude where I could definitely sue this person, but I can't be asked. I could definitely prove this, but I can't because that would be contempt of court. I don't have any answers to why this hasn't been pursued. And again, I'm not even criticizing her. That may well be the case, but I'm just stating that this is what she said. So anyway, she then tweets out, why are the media doing this? This is why. Adrenaline, organ harvesting, and the death of our daughter Paloma Scarlett Shemirani, a forensic and ethical indictment. We have all the evidence. Copyright Kate Shemirani 2025, all rights reserved. The paramedic, I think this was a tweet as well. She's copyrighted the tweet. Good on her. All rights reserved. The Paramedic 2 trial concluded that adrenaline improves short-term survival but not neurological outcomes, and its cost-effectiveness is only justifiable when the value of organ donation is included. This raises critical ethical questions regarding the real motives behind continued adrenaline use, especially when administered to patients who may not even be in cardiac arrest. In the case of our daughter Paloma Scarlett Shemirani, a 23-year-old multilingual Cambridge graduate, the evidence shows that she was never in cardiac arrest, yet she was given adrenaline doses equivalent to 12 times what her body weight would warrant and administered via intraosseous, which is the gun. She was also given paralyzing agents via femoral line in our home, commonly used to facilitate organ procurement, not recovery. The truth is undeniable. She did not die of cancer. She died from gross negligence manslaughter. The Paramedic 2 trial, survival or supply chain. The original trial showed adrenaline improved return of spontaneous circulation, ROSC, but most survivors suffered severe brain damage. A 2020 economic analysis published in Resuscitation revealed that following adrenaline was not cost-effective when only directly related costs and consequences are considered. However, incorporating the indirect economic effects associated with transplanted organs substantially alters cost-effectiveness. This admits that organ donation was factored in as a justification for giving adrenaline, despite its failure to improve real patient-centered outcomes. Paloma's case, no cardiac arrest, no consent. Yet to improve real patient, yet overdosed, prep for procurement, body weight 37 kilograms, which is 5 stone 12 pounds approx petite. Adrenaline given far in excess times 12, and too rapidly of BNF dose, which is 10 mcg over kg in cardiac arrest. LifePack shows pulse and oxygen saturation present, witnessed by bystander and mother. They confirmed that she was monitored, breathing, and had a heartbeat. Use of intraosseous and then femoral line indicates aggressive access and typical use donation scenarios. Use of paralyzing agents identical to those used during controlled organ donation. We believe that she was treated as if she was a donor, not a patient. Removal of the paraphernalia and concealment of evidence at post-mortem. At post-mortem, there were no medical lines or cannula routine. This is as badly punctuated as that statement that Paloma gave to court. Anyway, no toxicology in a capital letters were performed despite repeated family requests. Coroner did not notify the family before autopsy, breaching regulations. Regulations got capital R. Coroner, no full stop. Coroner now claims cause of death is not important, no full stop. No brain damage in capitals. Imaging was performed before withdrawal of life support, EEG confirmed brain activity, but ventilation was removed anyway. Was Paloma used in Paramedic 3? Paramedic 3 trial was currently live in East Sussex. Adrenaline protocols with intraosseous gun, blah, 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 blah. Matt Hancock stated in 2021 that Britain will become a global leader in organ donation, supplying organs to the Commonwealth. This aligns with the strategic shift towards harvesting organs from brain-dead donors using policies masked as public health improvement. Creating donors, warning. Paloma was not in cardiac arrest. She was lucid, eating, interacting hours before. She fainted, then deteriorated only after the arrival of the ambulance team and the drug protocols. Unprotected. That's apparently an entire sentence. Unprotected. She was treated as state property and the actions taken mirror what is seen in live organ procurement, not life-saving medicine. Right. There's quite a bit to unpack there. We'll forgive the dreadful punctuation because she's obviously cross. So, here's the thing, right? Okay, again, they use this thing where basically they say that, like, Paramedic 2 showed that adrenaline increases the survival rate, but does potentially give neurological damage and sometimes very severe brain damage. And they're saying that this is a bad thing. However, what happens if you don't give them the adrenaline?
Zero chance.
Exactly. Like, nobody's suggesting that it is perfect, but people do survive. Now, they're saying that the only reason that they want people to survive is to get them to hospital for enough time for them to essentially get their organs out, because they have this ridiculous idea that you have to take organs out of a live body or very, very shortly after death. Also, she's got this weird thing where she doesn't believe in brain death, basically. So I don't quite understand it, because, like, did they murder her or did they take her organs? Because if you have to kill somebody, if you have to take their organs before they're dead, then I don't know. It probably doesn't make any sense, because it probably doesn't make any sense. So anyway, so that's the first point. Does this paper say that adrenaline was not cost effective when only directed related costs with consequences are considered? Incorporating the indirect economic effects associated with transplanted organs substantially alters cost effectiveness. Does this paper say that? Yes. Does this basically mean that they're going around and stealing organs from people to then sell them so that they can be, as Matt Hancock says, what was it, the a global leader in organ donation, supplying organs to the Commonwealth. Does that paper say that? No, it doesn't. What it's talking about is the fact that basically medicine is not isolated to the incident that happens. There's all sorts of other things. And one proposal that this paper says is that one factor that might justify the cost of this adrenaline is that if people survive cardiac arrest, they can then later give organs, and people are always after organs, and therefore people won't need other expensive things like heart treatments and dialysis, say, and being put on ventilator type machines, because when we've got these organs, they can have organ transplants, and that will offset the expensive treatment that they would otherwise had to have had. Okay. Now there's several things wrong with this idea that basically they're stealing organs from people to kill them, to depopulate people, to then use these organs to sell them. Because what do you do with what is the result of organ transplant? People live. So why are you taking the organs in a depopulation concept? Why are you taking the organs out of other people and killing them, right? Okay, so that you can then put them into other people who would have died, so that they can then survive, right? And the answer to that will be that basically, well, it does happen in wealthy people. For example, in China, there is a genuine thing where the government of China is stealing organs, particularly from people like in the Falun Gong and such like that, prisoners, and even the Uyghur Muslims and stuff like that, and selling these organs, right? But there's 2 points. One, China has got nearly a billion, is it a billion or nearly a billion people living there? They need a lot of organs, right? Okay. And here's the other thing, right? Okay. You know what would prevent the need for governments to surreptitiously be stealing organs from people that they murder in order to get enough organs that people need for transplants? If people were organ donors. And that is something that Kay and people and other people in that circle are virulently against. And I don't understand why. Maybe it's a religious thing. And you know what? They're perfectly entitled to their opinion. But here's the thing. If there was a better organ donation system, you wouldn't need to be murdering people and stealing their organs. I'm not saying that that's what has happened. That is what they're claiming has happened. But that is the irony of that position, is that it would solve that particular problem. Now there's other things, right, that aren't correct in this. They keep saying she fainted and blah blah blah. Then why did you call the ambulance? Why was CPR required? Why could you not find the heartbeat? Why did you insert a nasal cannula? Why did her SATs drop to dangerous levels? And again, I don't know. This is what you told us in previous interviews. Either something was wrong that required the ambulance arriving, or there wasn't anything wrong. And then the ambulance arrived and for some reason just loaded her up with adrenaline and killed her. Except she didn't die. She was then taken to hospital where she was on life support for a short time. I don't know. It doesn't, I don't know. But secondary benefits of organ donation, which is the statement. A secondary benefit refers to a potential for organ donations for patients who achieve RISC and are admitted to hospital, but sometimes do not survive long term. In such cases, if the patient is a candidate for organ donation, and organs could be donated, they potentially save other lives. This is considered a secondary benefit because this is an indirect outcome of adrenaline use, not the primary goal of improving the patient's survival or the quality of life. But the paper doesn't suggest that organ donation is a primary intent of adrenaline administration, nor does it imply any unethical practices by the NHS. It simply acknowledges that increased hospital admissions due to adrenaline could lead to more opportunities for organ donation under standard medical and ethical protocols. Okay. But also, people do survive with adrenaline. And without the adrenaline, they definitely don't survive. It's a complicated issue. Is it perfect? No, it's a horrible, horrible thing to think about. But the idea that the only reason that they're doing this is to make them viable for organ donation, it doesn't even make sense because, again, according to what Kay said, she refused that process. So unless the person is an organ donor anyway, I suppose the argument might be that, well, they'll just get on while they're grieving and say, you know what would be good if you blah, blah, blah and did this. This is all rather elaborate. You know what would be a better idea? Some sort of concerted effort to get more people to carry donor cards. It's not as nefarious and satanic, but it would probably work better. Particularly if they explained the fact that this will improve other aspects of the NHS, because then when people get these organs in this depopulation program, other people will survive. And when these other people survive, they no longer need the long-term care that is associated with having a defective organ. And that means that potentially you get to see your GP sooner. I don't know. It just seems to me that basically the Illuminati, with their keen sort of looking at marketing and strategy and stuff like that, might have approached it in a different way. Unless, of course, they just love to kill. And, we're all guilty of that. It does become somewhat addictive. But also, if this is a secret plot to harvest organs, right, why would they tell people in this paper? I mean, it doesn't say that at all. But why would they publish their evil plans? As I say, what it's saying
Revelation of the method.
That is actually a thing that she said on one of these interviews. But she didn't say revelation of the method. She says that under common law or under English law, you have to actually tacitly explain it. That people, which is also bollocks.
Which is basically the same thing, yeah.
Yeah.
Just taking the magic out of it.
Yeah. It's not sinister, right? Okay. Adrenaline is literally the last option to save somebody's life, right? It's not perfect, but the alternative appears to be certain death. And they keep saying that they gave too many shots. Do you know what determines how many shots they give? As far as I can tell,
no.
They keep giving you shots till you respond.
Mm.
Yeah. So
this also makes me think of the ventilators. They had a problem with ventilators, and that's also used if that's your last chance.
Exactly.
They seem to not like life-saving medicine.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing with chemotherapy. Chemotherapy can be horrific. It makes you feel dreadful. It can not work. Same thing with a lot of other treatments, right? Okay, you can have surgeries that go wrong. You can have radiotherapy that ends up poisoning you. You can have bad reactions to medicines. You can have all of these things. But to suggest that is the point or the purpose of those medicines is to skew reality. And that's what they're saying here. It's not even saying that actually this is a bad protocol and it's not as effective as it should be. They're saying that this is used to cover up mass murder and organ theft. But if that was the case, if that's standard to steal organs, then think about how many people must be in on it. At least, because if Kate's figured out this, right, with her nurse's knowledge, and other nurses, other paramedics, other doctors must have figured out that, hang on, every time we do this, this happens. So all the paramedics and nurses must be in on it. It must have been explained to them what they're doing and why. And if that's the case, I'd struggle to see why there might not be some more damning, clear evidence that doesn't rely on what might appear as willful misinterpretation of a document that's talking about cost-benefit offset as an admission of mass murder and organ harvesting in order to line the pockets of the elite, which is part of a depopulation program which relies on giving people the organs that make them survive. I don't know. I don't know. But as I say, let's say that.
It's complicated, man. It's complicated.
But again, I'll reiterate, if that is the case, if that is the thing that they're saying, then the answer to that is encourage people to become organ donors. That is literally fighting fire with fire. Well, it's not literally fighting fire with fire, but figuratively. So anyway, that is the first sort of document that Kay puts forward as an explanation. And as I say, she claims that shows that they are using adrenaline to keep people alive solely for the purpose of stealing their organs. And I don't think that I don't think she's been accurate in her interpretation of that paper. It does say that their organs is a benefit of it. Okay, but that's not the purpose. The purpose is to try and make people survive. That's why the paper's there. Think about it. Why are we doing this? It's so expensive making people survive. If the paper has had to come up with that explanation, it's after the fact. So this is somebody looking to justify it. This isn't somebody saying, before the fact, if we did this, that would be a good way to steal our organs. Somebody has said, this adrenaline thing that we're using, it isn't half costing some money. Is there any way we can justify it? And someone's gone, oh yeah, here's a way, because the NHS works as a system as opposed to just as an island. Here's a way. If it was the plot, wouldn't that come first? Otherwise, how would they know to do it? Do you see? Anyway, Sebastian then goes on Twitter and says, this week on X, the conspiracy crazies have said that I should be grateful to my mother, yes, the one that murdered my sister, that my sister didn't have cancer, A, that I abused my sister, A, me, not the woman that murdered her. It's Murphy's Law for tweets. Whatever can be said will be said by at least one of them. And, well, that's certainly true. He then goes on to say, of course, this isn't by accident. This is their strategy. Make claims so fantastical and absurd that you can't disprove them all and you lose your motivation and sanity in trying. Well, too bad. I forever will be motivated to get justice for Paloma. And if 17 years didn't take away my sanity, this won't. I'm fucking bulletproof and I'm coming for you. And, yeah, so, he's obviously quite cross. He then posts 10 commandments for versus Kay Shemirani, because I think he's found that she's I don't know if she's strictly a Quasimodo, but she certainly is Christian and makes a sort of somewhat of a big deal of it. And what Sebastian's pointing out is that maybe the way he sees her doesn't line up entirely with what we might call classical Christian doctrine. So he posts this on Twitter. 1, I am the Lord your God. You shall not have strange gods before me. Kay constantly talks of chakras, energy, lizard people, etc. Her ideology is a mishmash of concepts from various religions and conspiracies, which is all heretical. 2, you shall not take the name of your Lord, your God, in vain. From personal experience, I know that the woman has the mouth of a sailor, and God's name isn't exempt. Growing up, she referred to our religious family friends as God-botherers behind their backs, including a vicar and a lovely Catholic woman. She only calls herself Christian to widen the appeal of her platform to religious people. 3, remember to keep the holy the Lord's Day. For Kay, every day is a chance to profit. She's been on fringe podcasts and social media every Sunday promoting her views and monetizing my sister's death, who she killed. The last time she went to church was to get her kids into a chosen school. 4, honour your mother and father. Kay stole £10,000 from her own father, then didn't speak to him for years before he died. Thanks to Kay, I never met my grandfather. Right, shit. 5, you shall not kill. Kay, do I really need to explain why you failed this one? You kill for profit. 6, you shall not commit adultery. Kay's personal life is an endless string of affairs with teachers from my secondary school, neighbours, etc. She fell pregnant from another man and had an abortion while she was with my father, yet she protests against abortion and claims it's for organ harvesting. 7, you shall not steal. For over 10 years, Kay has been laundering money for her ex-lover Patrick Vickers, another pseudoscience salesman. They run a fraudulent clinic in Mexico where they take tens of thousands of dollars from vulnerable cancer patients. They promise them a cure, feed them vegetables, and pocket as much cash as possible before the victims die. Kay places this cash into a UK banking system, often via cash deposits in Uckfield, East Essex. Obviously, she pays no tax on this or her unregistered business of Botox injections, which she also runs in Uckfields. And hmrc.gov.uk, are you interested in this? He shopped his mum to the VAT people, to the tax people. Nice. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbour. Kay has accused me of being paid by the BBC, my brother of working for MI6, and my sister's last boyfriend of sexual abuse. Anything besides the facts of her own crimes, which is what Kay will come out, is what Kay will come out of Kay's mouth. 9. You should not covet your neighbour's wife. Good job, Kay. We found a commandment that you might not have broken. 10. You shall not covet your neighbour's goods. Kay is the most jealous, insecure, materialistic, class-conscious person I've ever met. When I got a scholarship to attend boarding school, she would not visit me because she said she was embarrassed to be seen by the other parents. She trained for years to hide her native Midlands accent. My whole childhood was her pushing for bigger houses, TVs, cars, wardrobes, and driving my father nuts in the process. She now kills cancer victims for cash. Kay, I'd call that a fail. It's clear that your so-called faith is a marketing gimmick. I pray that hell is real so that you will burn there. Crikey. So, on July the 1st, Kay then tweets out, Paloma had no confirmed diagnosis, only one deadly treatment offered that could have worsened her real condition. Why? Her bloods and symptoms were not indicative of lymphoma. They did indicate infection. Why not rule this out? Right, I hate to keep harping on this, but according to you, you refused other tests and took her out of hospital. And again, perhaps there is an answer to this, but if it's an infection, these other clinics that you apparently have, why don't they treat it as an infection? Anyway, lied to and treated without knowledge or consent. Deceived. We have our own pathologist and another expert pathologist. The autopsy with no pathology, toxicology, or anything. A no-topsy. Why? To conceal their crimes. We have all the evidence. We have the reports. The following points are now incontrovertibly established from all available histology and 4 senior histologists. Paloma Shemirani was never definitively diagnosed with cancer. The diagnosis of primary mediastinal large B-cell lymphoma, I apologize for the butchering of that, remained differential and speculative. Granulomas were identified in the biopsy consistent with tuberculosis, fungal infection, or sarcoidosis. Infection causes that were never excluded. Key diagnostic tools, CD23, immunostating, fish microbial stains were omitted or impossible due to tissue mishandling. Treatment included rasburicase, corticosteroids, and chemotherapy was administered without confirmed pathology and in the absence of lawful informed consent. Possible diagnosing testing done? Question mark. Notes. Tuberculosis. No granulomas noted, but no ZN stain. TB. PCR or AFB, cultural fungal infection, Aspergillus flaviniae. No fungal stains or cultures taken. Sarcoidosis. No granulomas present. No ACE, lysozyme or further markers, grey zone lymphoma or CH-like inclusive only presumed basis on clinical location. Not phenotype primary mediastinal lymphoma. Unconfirmed. Weak. MUM1 weak. CD15 negative. Why? Wake up, people. Demand your histology. Get second options. Get everything tested. Paloma was denied these. She had to legally demand them to find out. After they administered drugs that destroy lymphocytes and erythrocytes, just what you need to fight infection, mold, and cancer. I thought she didn't have cancer. I don't know. I still have questions such as like, well, fine, right? Like, why don't you get these further tests? Why don't Vickers do these tests? How come Gerson was used if there was no diagnosis? Why did the clinics in Iran and Germany not help? Why did you do no further explanation of possible causes? Why no second biopsy? Like, again, there may well be answers to all of this, but like, it just seems like, fine. If you're saying that you believe there was a misdiagnosis, then why was she ill for 7 months? Oh, but you say because of the Raspuria case and stuff like that. I don't know if that's a thing. Like, why did she lose 2 stone? Like, why was she doing Gerson therapy and hyperbaric chambers if that wasn't the thing? What caused her 7 months after this medicine to go into such a state that you required the paramedics to be called? Don't know. Just don't know. So anyway, Kate then decides to go on UNN again. It's obviously a hard time. So Kate, understanding the gravity of the situation and not wanting to come across as sensationalist, she decides to title this in a very sensitive way. The interview is called "We're All Being Gang Raped" with special guests Kate Shemirani and Stuart Wilkie, which somewhat implies that they're doing the gang raping, but I don't think that's what it means. But anyway, so in this, she basically describes a snod. And a snod, it's not one of those sort of half scarf, half balaclava things. It's a specialist nurse in organ donation. And she describes them as like sort of consultants that are ascribed to every single hospital. And what the snod does is they stalk up and down hospital wards like a sort of vulture meets the angel of death, looking for people that might be potential organ donors. And she implies that that is all that they're bothered about. Literally, they're out there looking for organs, just out there trying to get that. She also says that they're all psychopaths and they don't care if patients die. Further than that, she says there are actually protocols in place to make sure that people die so that they can then steal their organs. And she says that what happens is when these family members have unexpectedly died, the snod will essentially blindside families who are upset. And whilst pretending to offer comfort, they're basically sort of like doing the hard sell of getting them to consent to give over the organs of their loved ones. And again, they do seem to forget the fact that these organs are used to save other people's lives, which again does somewhat diminish the idea that this is a world depopulation plan. But anyway, Kate says, is your loved one being cared for or are they being harvested? And she says that these snods are embedded at all hospitals, every single hospital. And someone comes into the chat, right, and says that she works in a hospital and she's never seen or met a snod. And Kate responds with really good grace. Oh, no, she doesn't. She gets really shirty and basically implies that this person is either a liar or an idiot. And then Kate says that she's got the documents to prove it. Also, she's drinking what looks very much like piss. It might be tea, it might be apple juice, it might be booze, but it looks like piss. Anyway, she quotes this as proof that this person in the chat is lying. Betsy Bassis, chief executive of the NHS Blood and Transplant said, "This new strategy sets out our ambitions to be world leaders in organ donation and transplantation." And that's quite scary, isn't it? Unless, of course, you read on, which for some reason she doesn't. I don't know why she doesn't read on. So she gets to this point. This new strategy sets out our ambitions to be world leaders in organ donation and transplantation. And then what she doesn't read is, we aim to balance the evolution of current best practice with a revolution in new technologies and research to deliver real improvements for people in need of a transplant. Despite significant progress, these remain substantial challenges and opportunities to securing a suitable organ for everyone who needs a transplant. Some initiatives from the previous strategies will continue, whilst we look to implement new ones with the potential to increase the numbers of both living and deceased donation. These will in turn deliver real improvements for people in desperate need of transplant. Yeah. It's and then the paper goes on.
I mean, at the end of the day, she doesn't probably think that these organs are being transplanted. She probably thinks they're being served up for lunch at Davos.
Well, yeah, potentially. Like, yeah, she might well do, but that's not what the documents say. And if she's saying that that's what the documents imply or prove, it isn't. The paper goes on. Anthony Clarkson, Director of Organ, Tissue and Donation and Transplantation at NHS Blood and Transplant, said, "There is no doubt that this is an ambitious strategy, but we need to be ambitious and set the bar high if we're going to achieve our aim of saving even more lives by designing the very best organ donation and transplantation service in the world. The strategy brings together living and deceased donation for the first time and relies on all those in the donation and transplant community across the UK to deliver it. There is a genuine desire to ensure that every donation opportunity is taken, that every precious donated organ that can be safely transplanted and to save and improve someone's life is transplanted." And now the thing is, what you could say is that, well, they're lying in that paper. They're lying. That's not what they're doing with those organs, as you implied, Brent. But it's like, fine. But then that's not evidence. That's your pure speculation off the back of that. She then gets really cross and starts insulting the audience, which is always a sign that it's going well. She says that they're stupid, deaf, dumb, and blind. And if I was desperately cynical, I would suggest that this is because she realizes that some people in the audience aren't going along with what she's saying and potentially even don't believe her. She then either lies or misinterprets large parts of the NHS explanation. Right, in this thing, it says the 6 key areas for action are: 1, for living and deceased donation to become an expected part of care where clinically appropriate for all society. And Kate says that what this means is that it takes away your right to consent or opt out of organ donation. Let me read that again. For living and deceased donation to become an expected part of care where clinically appropriate for all in society. Now, that takes away your right to consent. It doesn't say that at all. It doesn't say that at all. It's a hope, it's an ambition that organ donation, either by carrying a donor card when you're living, which is living donation, it's not taken from like, catch him, stick him in a carpet and cut his fucking liver out. It's not that. And deceased donation, which is basically like, if we don't know that he's donor, the family go, okay, yes, that's fine, because it is just one of those things that is no longer taboo or weird in society. It's not about forcing you to do that. It's about hopefully changing attitudes so that people want to do that. So when she says that this takes away your right to consent or opt out, it doesn't, does it? So I think she may have misinterpreted that slightly. It then says, 2, for optimal organ utilization in every organ group benefiting from new technologies and techniques. And Kate says, hello, you're going to have a doctor in your pocket. And she's referring to like smartwatches and health monitoring devices. And what she seems to be suggesting here is that what this is saying is that smartwatches and smart devices and health monitoring devices and all these apps and things that we do when we go to the gym or whatever, they're essentially there to chart to see when you are ripe for organ donation. Which again, that's not what I took from the sentence. I mean, in fairness, I haven't worked in nursing, so I don't know the jargon and the shit. Right, okay. But again, it may be that she might have misinterpreted that. For some reason, she skips 3 and 4, but we're not going to. It's possibly because they don't sound like a depopulation agenda. Number 3 says, 3, to make the most effective use of precious donor organs, ensuring that recipient outcomes are among the best in the world. And 4 says, to enable people of all backgrounds and circumstances to have timely access to the organs that they need. So it's not, I mean, at least according to this document, it's not about providing just for the elites, and it's not about depopulating the planet. It's about ensuring that organs, which they describe as precious, get to the recipient everywhere, regardless of your background, regardless of your circumstance, so that everybody has the best chance to life. And if that is the case, it would seem strange to be that in order to fulfill this, that they embark on a campaign of mass murder. 5. To secure substantial service across the UK, making the most of every opportunity for a donation or transplant, as donation numbers increase due to new legislation. Do you want to know how? Have a guess at how she's interpreted that. Let me read it again for you. To secure a sustainable service across the UK, making the most of every opportunity for a donation or transplant, as donation numbers increase due to new legislation.
I'm not twisted enough to figure it out.
Well, she claims that what this means is that the government has admitted in this one line there that they can take your organs out of you without your consent whilst you're still alive.
Wow.
Did you get that?
No, I did not get that from that.
No, nor did I. Like, which is strange. And again, who knows? Personally, I think she may have misinterpreted that. She then quotes from National Standards for Organ Retrieval from Deceased Donors. And she quotes, right, this was a bit of a fucker, actually, because she says, Section 1 of 1, the donor is pronounced deceased, but circulatory criteria as usual. The retrieval surgeon notes that the heart is still beating in an effective and sustained fashion, and that there's a pulse in the aorta. Well, excuse me, but hit me over the head with a bottle. And what she says there is that basically what that's saying is it's describing an organ donation, a donation of the heart, and then halfway through the heart starts beating again. Retrieval surgeon notes that the heart is still beating in an effective and sustained fashion, and there's a pulse in the aorta, which means that it's at least pumped one shot of blood around the circulatory system. And she says that this is proof that they are murdering people and they're stealing organs. She doesn't exactly quote it correctly. Also, this is why I struggled to find this, right? Because there appear to be two documents with exactly the same name, the same title. One's MPD 1043/9, and one is MPD 1043/10. And she's quoting from the latter. But both of them have the same title, which was why I was really struggling to find. You remember I said before, I was like, I don't think this is in the document that she said. It is in the document. It's just in the different version of the document. Okay. But it doesn't say section 1.1. It's a situation 1, right? And when you read the whole document in context, it really isn't that. It doesn't appear to be what she's saying it is. And in fact, you could even make the argument that the title of this section disproves what she's actually saying.
Okay.
The title of this section from MPD 104310 is National Standards for Organ Retrieval from Deceased Donors. Well, so 2 points. One, she says that you can't take them from deceased donors. And 2, she says that this document is about people murdering people whilst this operation goes on. It could be that the very title suggests that she may have misinterpreted that. But let's read the entire thing. Although exceptionally rare, it is possible that effective and sustained cardiac activity could emerge after death during DCD retrieval. Cardiac activity after death does not by itself constitute the serious adverse event. Consider DCD heart donation. It is reperfusion of the brain, which is inappropriate in DCD donors, and this must be prevented. The only exception to this is when a donor has already been pronounced dead by neurological criteria. In this case, reperfusion has no clinical effect, as the donor is equivalent to DBD in terms of arch-facial perfusion, which means it's actually dead. Right? So, note that these directions apply to the SNOD and retrieval teams. Other specialists involved will follow their own protocols and apply their own clinical judgments. It should be borne out in mind that DCD retrieval retrieval proceeds at the fastest possible speed, which seems logical and ordered in the text below, and may be challenging to deliver. So that's before the bit that she explains. Do you know what DCD is? Is donation after circulatory death, previously referred to as donation after cardiac death or non-heart beating organ donation. And this refers to the retrieval of organs for the purposes of transplantation from patients whose death is diagnosed and confirmed using cardiorespiratory criteria. So there are two principal types of DCD, controlled and uncontrolled. Uncontrolled DCD refers to organ retrieval after cardiac arrest that is unexpected and from which the patient cannot or should not be resuscitated.
And if memory serves correctly, this would mean that the patient was dead to Kay, because she doesn't really believe in the brain dead.
Bingo.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah, so what this is saying is that these are people that have been pronounced dead because their heart no longer has the capacity to beat.
Yep.
Okay. Now, in contrast, controlled DCD takes place after death, which follows the planned withdrawal of life-sustaining treatments that have been considered to be of no overall benefit to critically ill patients. Anyway, a heart may appear to start beating during organ removal due to several physiological or procedural factors, though it's not necessarily a sign of life or consciousness. And this isn't from the paper up, sorry, just to explain. I'm explaining what the beginning bit says, and then we're going to go back to the bit that Kay said. So, why might the heart start again, even though this is not a sign of life or consciousness? Residual electrical activity, even after clinical death and cessation of brain function, the heart muscle can retain some automaticity. Cardiac cells have intrinsic pacemaker properties, meaning that they can generate electrical impulses without brain input. During organ removal, stimulation from surgical manipulation, changes in temperature, or electrolyte shifts in the body could trigger residual electrical activity, causing muscle contractions that resemble a heartbeat. Reflexive or autonomic responses. The heart is influenced by the autonomic nervous system, which can sometimes remain partially active for a short period after death. Cutting or manipulating tissues during surgery might stimulate nearby nerves or release chemicals that cause temporary cardiac muscle contractions. Reperfusion effects. If the heart is being prepared for transplantation, it may be connected to a perfusion system to prevent it. When blood or a preservation solution is reintroduced, the heart can sometimes resume rhythmic contractions due to the return of oxygen and nutrients, even if the patient is deceased. Misinterpretation of movement. During organ removal, the heart might twitch or contract slightly due to mechanical stimulation from surgical tools or changes in pressure. These movements can be mistaken for a heartbeat, especially by non-medical observers, but they do not indicate a functioning heart or a viable patient. 5. Post-mortem muscle contractions. After death, muscles, including the heart, which is a muscle, can sometimes contract due to chemical changes, such as the release of calcium ions in muscle cells. This is a purely physiological response and not a sign of life. In organ donation, patients are declared brain dead or have circulatory death confirmed by strict medical protocols before organ removal begins. Brain death means that the complete and irreversible loss of brain function, so the patient is legally and medically deceased, even if the heart shows temporary activity. For donation after circulatory death, which is what this paper is talking about, the heart has got to have been stopped for a defined period, usually 5 minutes, before organ recovery starts, ensuring no viable function remains. Okay, so let's go back to this paper, which we remember is about removing organs from a deceased patient. And this is specifically about people that have been declared cardiac dead. Okay, so Let's go back into it from the quote that Kay decided to use. Situation 1. The donor is pronounced... Now, she doesn't read this bit. The donor is pronounced deceased by circulatory criteria as usual. She then starts to read. The retrieval surgeon notes that the heart is beating in an effective and sustained fashion and or there is a pulse in the aorta. She then stops reading because it then says this. This could be the very start of the DCD procedure or perhaps subsequently. And she doesn't read that bit out because she doesn't want people to know that this is about DCD procedure. This is a very specific thing. But anyway, maybe she's still right. Maybe she's talking about people like stealing the organs of people who are still alive. In the retrieval, if the retrieval surgeon considers that there is an effective sustained cardiac activity which could perfuse the brain, the retrieval team should abandon all retrieval-related interventions immediately, including any form of ventilation, and stand away from the donor. The NORS lead surgeon should inform the on-call consultant at the NORS base. The SNOD should summon support from the donor hospital anaesthetic critical care team as a matter of urgency. The donor hospital anaesthetic critical care team should reinstate ECG and arterial pressure monitoring if practicable, and consider the administration of analgesic and sedative agents to prevent the possibility of the patient suffering prior to the return of cardiorespiratory arrest. Cardiac activity is unlikely to be sustained for long, and circulatory arrest will occur. If all team members agree, as it is permissible for organ retrieval to resume, once directed by the donor hospital anaesthetic critical care team. However, the NORS surgeon, in discussion with the on-call consultant, may consider that the team are not able to complete surgery. In the situation where donation proceeds, any lung reinflation prior to lung retrieval must be delayed until at least 15 minutes after the final acetal. The on-call regional manager should be called as soon as practicable, and the incident should be reported through both the donor and hospital and the NHSBT incident reporting system. The lead personnel involved in the incident should be completed a comprehensive account of the incident in the patient's medical records. Situation 2, blah, 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 blah. So, I think she may have cherry-picked a sentence out of there to make it sound like that something is being said in this paper that isn't being said. Because what it says very clearly after that is that if the heart starts, and we understand the reason why it might appear to start, then they act as if the patient is alive and they alleviate suffering and monitor it. They're in a position by this time where the heart has previously not beat for 5 minutes, which would cause such catastrophic death, brain damage, which he was so concerned about with the adrenaline. The point being, I don't think she is accurately representing this paper. This paper, to me, does not describe taking the beating heart out of a patient like that bit in Temple of Doom. It to me, describes what you would do if, due to one of numerous known medical and physiological happenings, the heart starts to pump again. And what you do is you sedate the patient and make sure that they are comfortable, even though you know that they are dead. You do not muck about with it. Okay? You walk away. And as we've discussed, all of those... So let's think about this logically. Either those 5 reasons that a heartbeat might be or appear to have the appearance of beating after death, either they are all real things that have been witnessed and talked about and studied throughout the annals of medicine for years, or they aren't real things that are used as a cover for stealing organs. Because if they aren't real things, why are they in this paper? Because the paper is there as part of the broader cover-up. But the simpler explanation is that this is describing taking organs from a person who is under cardiac death, and due to known physiological responses that the body has, the heart might give the appearance of beating after death. But the problem with that is that this is the crux of her argument. This combined with the previous paper, which I also humbly think that she may have misinterpreted. And that's a problem. That is a problem. Then she kind of messes up. Because she goes to read the paragraph about the surgeon stopping if the heart seems to be beating, and she stumbles over. She starts to read the bit about the DCD procedure, and for whatever reason, she sort of stumbles over those words and skips ahead to go to the bit where if the retrieval surgeon considers that there is sustained effective cardiac activity that could perfuse the brain, and the retrieval team should abandon all retrieval interventions immediately and stand away from the donor. She then says that the SNOD needs to call an anaesthetic team straight away to avoid the patient suffering. And then she shouts, "Oh, come on!" Even though what she's read doesn't really say what she thinks it says. And then going back to that previous paper, there was another one that she never even bothers with at all. You remember she missed, I think it was 3 and 4, and she went to 5. 6 says, 6, we need to build a pioneering culture of research and innovation in donation and transplantation in the UK. Again, it's about donation. It's not about harvesting organs for the elite. It's not about murdering people. It's about trying to save other people's lives when patient is trying to save patient B when patient A has had a horrible, horrible, tragic thing happen to them. It's not about murdering patient A as far as I can see. David Clues, who's the Penfold guy, he then he raises a concern. Can you imagine what his concern is? Well, his chief worry is that foreigners might be getting these organs. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, I was kind of close when I said Davos. I mean, Klaus Schwab is certainly a foreigner.
It gets worse. Slightly, it gets worse slightly later, but basically, he worries that maybe foreigners might be getting access to these organs, which isn't fair, obviously, which kind of fucks up the entire point of it. Which is, I thought it was a depopulation thing, but anyway, whatever. Stuart Wilkie, who's the guest that's on, says that obviously this isn't allowed, but it's almost certainly happening. But then they start to say that all the organs go to the wealthiest, and they use a specific example. Now, I thought they were going to use that David Rockefeller has had 8 hearts thing, which came from the World Weekly News or something. And it's obviously not true. Or the idea that Soros has had several lung transplants and all these stupid things that go around. They do actually use a sort of, it is technically real, but they say that organs always go to the wealthiest people. And as proof of this, they decide to invoke George Best. George Best, the footballer.
The footballer, yeah.
Yeah. Now,
because he was an alcoholic?
Yeah, absolutely. And what they say is this is an example, this is a prime example of if you can afford it, you can just do what you want. Because what they claim is that he drank himself to the point where his liver failed. He had a liver transplant, then continued to keep drinking until he required a second liver transplant, and then continued to drink until he drank himself to death, thus destroying 3 livers in the process. And there is there is 2 fundamental problems with that theory. One, he only ever had 1 liver transplant. And 2, the liver transplant that he had was on the NHS at the expense of taxpayers. So if they're using him as an example of a person that can buy multiple organs and then run them into the ground, well, he didn't buy them and he didn't have multiple organs. So unfortunately, that doesn't really work. So they keep using this. They keep bringing up this place called Kings County, Seattle. And they say that this place in Kings County, Seattle, has got a 61% cardiac arrest survival rate. And they keep talking about how this is marvelous and why can't we do this in the UK and stuff like that. But the problem is, well, it's not really a problem, but do you want to know why Kings County, Seattle has got such a high cardiac arrest survival rate?
Let me guess, is there like a university or a medical university there that specializes in it or something?
It's not exactly that, but it's not far off. Basically, they have a mass campaign of teaching people CPR. Like it's taught to people as a matter of course through businesses and through school and through organizations and stuff like that. And they've got an inordinate amount of defibrillation machines throughout the area. So basically what is happening here is that they're dealing with people who are having heart attacks or going into cardiac arrest before the need for adrenaline. They're responding to
So there's a campaign for prevention.
Yeah. Yeah, but now here's the weird thing. Can you remember when during COVID they were suggesting that we put more defibs around and teach people how to do CPR?
I remember.
And what was the response from the conspiracy crowd?
That they're trying to kill us.
Yeah. So it does somewhat seem that, hang on, you can't have it both ways. You don't think that these things are a good idea and that you are championing this as the solution to the problem of the Illuminati stealing people's organs. Now, then Kate looks at the screen and very, very sort of earnestly says that she doesn't lie. And then she says that she knows this top-level NHS guy who really wanted to leave, right, because he was in on the whole sort of satanic nature of it, right, okay? But he couldn't. And in order to make him not leave, as he was trying to quit his job, 2 burly security guards took him into a room, locked the door, and gave him a fucking good hiding. And then he, who we presume is still working for the NHS because of fear of further hidings from burly security guards, told Kate that at the top of the NHS, all the surgeons and management perform satanic black magic rituals. And we know this to be true because Kate emphasized at the beginning of this story that she doesn't lie. She then goes on to say that the only way that you can harvest organs from babies is to literally cut them up seconds after they are born without anesthetic. And she says that there are teams that are literally taking babies out of women and immediately cutting their lungs, hearts and retinas out with no anesthetic, because if they gave anesthetic, it would destroy the baby's organs. And we must remember that Kate said that she doesn't lie. So this must be true.
She definitely sounds like she would share Frazzle Drip.
David Clues, the guy, he's been ruminating on his concern that all these foreigners are getting these organs. And when he hears that babies are being cut up seconds after birth so that their organs can be harvested, he points out that there are a lot of African doctors and nurses who work in the NHS. Maybe they're brought over because they're used to this sort of, chopping up babies and stuff like that. He doesn't exactly say that, but it's what he heavily implies, that they'd be down with this. They'd be absolutely cool, presumably because they are African.
Holy fuck.
Yeah.
Whoa.
They then pivot onto a new topic, which is basically, they say that, don't you think it's ridiculous that you aren't allowed to call yourself a nurse if you aren't actually a registered nurse? Yeah. I think we fully understand why Kate might think that. But yeah, that's the end of the interview with Thing. And that was pretty much where everything was going. And then there's been this back and forth on Twitter between the two sons and Kate. Kate's essentially slinging mud at them. They're responding and giving their side of the story. And on July the 6th, Gabe tweeted I wasn't going to post these because, unlike Kay, I respect my deceased sister's privacy. But after having learned Kay had been distorting my sister's diary entries for her own ends, I think it's right that I do. In these messages, Paloma, a week before her heart attack, confides in another family member how Kay knew that she was dying, but instead chose to emotionally abuse her with it. I don't have to say anything else, because you can all see with your own eyes what kind of a woman we're dealing with. Ask Kay what her response is to this. And Paloma writes in this text, presumably, I'm not being funny, but did you tell Mummy that I feel that she makes me feel like a burden because she's in a foul mood? And whoever it is responds, no, I didn't say that. And what we're told to believe is Paloma says, and now that's the party line. She's repeating. And she says that you told her that. She's in the foulest fucking mood. I actually hate when she gets this way and there's nothing you can say. And the person responds, for fuck's sake, no, that's not what I said. She's just stressed about money and is angry. What are you doing? Eventually I said, and this is Paloma responding. Eventually I said I'm going to bed so she can leave me alone because I know that she's stressed, but she gets so mean when she is. Telling me that my bloods aren't good and at this rate I'll die. It's all so hurtful. It's now obviously we don't know if that's real, but if it is, that's horrible and horrific. And we don't know if this is real, but what we do know is that the sentiment of this is real, because, and this is the danger that Gabe and Sebastian have said that they fear is happening. Somebody posted on Twitter, and again, we don't know if this is specifically real, but this was not the only thing that I've seen that is in this particular sort of ballpark, shall we say. Somebody tweeted, Kate Shemirani, I need you. I can't DM you as I'm not verified. My mum found a lump in her breast and they've referred her. Shall I refuse the biopsy whilst it's inside? Please help. I'm willing to engage wherever and whenever. And I don't think we really, we presume a certain level of intelligence in our listeners. I don't think we really need to say much more about that. Now, obviously, we don't know what the truth is in regards to this. We simply don't, and we don't really have an opinion. All we've done here is we've looked at what's in the public domain, and we've tried to examine it and parse it out and analyze it to see what is happening. Because something is happening, and it could be that the NHS has got this ongoing plot to murder people through a protracted effort of making them believe that they have diseases that they don't have, ultimately giving them medicines that make them ill, driving them to a point where, through the use of adrenaline, they can murder people to harvest their organs. That is one potential possibility that is happening here. Or the other possibility is that somebody believed alternative treatments and they didn't work. And that's really what it is. And then if the second or the latter is true, then it's a question of, why did people believe this? Do they genuinely believe this? And is there anything that actually supports these beliefs that would make it so that this was in any way a sensible decision? Again, we don't know, because all we can do is look at what's been presented. But one thing that we can say is that if I were to say whether those particular pieces of NHS literature showed that Kate was correct in saying that the NHS has admitted a plot to steal people's organs or to kill people with adrenaline solely for the purpose of stealing their organs, I would suggest that I don't think she's interpreted those papers correctly. And if she hasn't interpreted those papers correctly, then I don't see what her evidence for this plot is. And, regardless of what's happened, something horrible has happened here. And it's just about what precisely that is.